Chile. From October to December 2019, Chile experienced its largest nationwide demonstrations since the end of dictatorship. The trigger was a 30 peso metro fare increase in Santiago, but the protests quickly spread across the country. The peak came on October 25, when more than 1 million people filled the capital in what was called La Marcha Más Grande, transforming Plaza Italia into Plaza Dignidad. The slogan, "It's not 30 pesos, it's 30 years," echoed everywhere, signaling that the issue was not just a minor fare hike, but 3 decades of accumulated inequality, demanding systemic change. The fare increase exposed deeper structural problems rooted in the neoliberal model inherited from the Pinochet era. Education and healthcare had been market-driven, pensions provided meager payouts, and the cost of living rose while wages remained stagnant. Household debt and corruption scandals further eroded public trust. The 1980 Constitution, seen as lacking legitimacy, became a barrier to broad redistributive reforms. After students began fare-dodging campaigns, the situation escalated on October 18 when metro stations were set on fire, prompting a state of emergency, curfews, and the deployment of police and the military. Yet soon afterward, the sound of banging pots and mass marches filled the streets. October 25 became emblematic, as millions from all walks of life rallied together. Accompanied by street art and protest songs, demands expanded to include canceling the fare hike, strengthening social programs, reforming the police, and holding a plebiscite to draft a new constitution. The movement came at a heavy cost. More than 20 people lost their lives, thousands were injured, and many sustained eye injuries. The government was forced to cancel the fare increase, announce a social agenda with measures such as raising the basic pension, freezing electricity rates, adjusting taxes, cutting official salaries, and reshuffling the cabinet. Most importantly, the 15th of November 2019, agreement paved the way for a constitutional referendum. By October 2020, nearly 80% of voters supported drafting a new constitution, and a constitutional convention was elected with gender parity and indigenous representation. However, both constitutional drafts, in 2022 and 2023, were rejected, underscoring the difficulty of reaching consensus, even as the demand for social justice remained urgent. Chile's political landscape shifted as well, with Gabriel Boric's 2021 victory symbolizing a generation shaped by street movements. The key lesson was that economic growth cannot substitute for dignity, fairness, and representation, and that sustainable reform requires institutionalization and long-term dialogue. The movement left enduring cultural symbols: the slogan, "Chile despertó," Chile woke up, the renaming of Plaza Italia to Plaza Dignidad, graffiti-covered walls, and protest songs ranging from El Derecho de Vivir en Paz to the global phenomenon Un Violador en tu Camino. For historians, the 2019 Estallido Social is seen as a pivotal moment, closing the long post-Pinochet transition and placing the Constitution and social justice at the center of national political life, while affirming the historic role of Chilean citizens. Ecuador and Colombia. In 2019, both Ecuador and Colombia experienced major waves of protest, reflecting long-standing social discontent. In Ecuador, from October 3 to 13, the capital Quito became the epicenter as tens of thousands, mainly indigenous communities and labor unions, filled the streets. The immediate trigger was the government's decision to eliminate fuel subsidies under an IMF agreement, causing fuel prices and living costs to soar. Combined with the Paquetazo reform package that cut wages and reduced benefits, anger quickly escalated. For 11 days, demonstrators occupied the National Assembly, detained police officers, and forced the government to impose a citywide curfew. Under mounting pressure, President Lenín Moreno relocated the seat of government outside the capital and ultimately repealed the controversial decree, entering direct negotiations with indigenous representatives. Just as Ecuador's unrest subsided, Colombia, on November 21, witnessed a nationwide strike known as the Paro Nacional. More than 200,000 people marched in Bogotá, Cali, Medellin, and other cities. The grievances extended beyond inequality and unemployment to include delays in implementing the peace accord with FARC, concerns over corruption, and rumors of pension and labor reforms seen as harmful. While the strike began peacefully, it soon included acts of unrest, from damage to public transit to scattered looting. Bogotá declared its first curfew in decades. The death of student Dylan Cruz on November 25, after being struck by a crowd-control projectile, became a powerful symbol, sparking further marches in his memory. In both countries, the immediate outcomes were clear. Ecuador saw more than 10 people lose their lives and thousands injured, but the government was forced to roll back austerity measures. Colombia recorded at least 4 deaths, along with hundreds injured and detained, while President Iván Duque launched a national conversation initiative to ease tensions, though it fell short of union and student expectations. Over the long term, these upheavals left lasting marks. In Ecuador, indigenous groups affirmed their role as a decisive social force capable of compelling policy change. In Colombia, the 2019 movement was seen as a turning point. For the first time in decades, a broad cross-section of civil society mobilized together on a national scale. It also laid the groundwork for the even larger protests of 2021 and contributed to Gustavo Petro's presidential victory in 2022. The imagery, slogans, and sounds of the streets still resonate. In Quito, graffiti and murals captured the rejection of austerity, while in Bogotá, the banging of pots and the face of Dylan Cruz became part of collective memory. Together, the two movements underscored a shared message. In times of economic and political crisis, Latin American governments cannot simply impose austerity without dialogue and a commitment to social justice. Indignados movement. In May 2011, Spain witnessed the sudden rise of a street protest movement known as the Indignados, or 15M. Beginning in Madrid's Puerta del Sol Square, thousands of young people rallied under the slogan, Democracia Real, why? Real democracy now, and the movement quickly spread to Barcelona, Valencia, Seville, and many other cities. Self-managed square camps, unaffiliated with political parties, and organized through nightly public assemblies, became powerful symbols of resistance at a time when the country was still struggling in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. The spark came from the prolonged recession. Youth unemployment had surpassed 40%. Housing foreclosures were widespread, and the government pursued austerity measures, cutting welfare and reforming labor laws. Many citizens felt they were paying the price for bank bailouts. With Spain's two dominant parties, PSOE and PP, increasingly seen as two sides of the same coin, the chant, "They don't represent us," captured a deep sense of political alienation. From the camps in Madrid and Barcelona, the movement grew into a square commune, complete with tents, kitchens, libraries, and even improvised medical services. Every evening, thousands joined assemblies that debated and reached decisions by consensus. Social media became a key tool of coordination, transforming 15M into a movement with global reach. Major milestones soon followed. On June 19, hundreds of thousands marched nationwide against austerity. By October 15, the movement participated in a global day of action alongside many other countries. While mostly peaceful, occasional clashes occurred, such as when police dismantled camps or used rubber bullets in Barcelona. By mid-June, many camps were voluntarily dismantled, but the energy of 15M shifted into neighborhood networks and focused campaigns, most notably the anti-eviction movement. Authorities sought to maintain balance, removing encampments but avoiding large-scale crackdowns, especially in Madrid. Still, debates over protest rights flared, and during the 2011 elections, protest voting highlighted widespread mistrust toward the traditional parties. Meanwhile, grassroots networks emerged, sustaining the spirit of dissent even after the squares were cleared. The influence of 15M extended far beyond 2011. Out of its spirit came the creation of Podemos in 2014, a new party that broke Spain's bipartisan dominance and placed anti-corruption and inequality at the heart of politics. At the local level, citizen platforms such as Barcelona en Comú and Ahora Madrid won control of major city governments. Internationally, 15M inspired Occupy Wall Street and anti-austerity movements across Europe. The cultural legacy of 15M remains vivid. Images of the square camps, the hand signals of consensus, and slogans like, "They don't represent us," or "We are not commodities in the hands of politicians and bankers," became part of collective memory. Documentaries, academic research, and even a commemorative plaque at Puerta del Sol, reading, "Dormíamos, despertamos." We were asleep, and now we have awakened. Recall 15M as a turning point. The rise of a generation demanding effective democracy and social justice. In post-1978 Spain,